Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Corey, better known as the Seaman, and I want to welcome you to another edition of the Seaman's Cinema Sit Down. Don't mind my glasses. I have transition lenses, and I was just outside, and they kicked in real quick. So they'll kind of transition back to where they want to be. But we need to transition out of my glasses and into a movie that gave us a little fan sneak peek the other night, and I had no words walking out of this movie. This is a movie that is giving us what might be one of the greatest movies of all time. We shall see as we watch it more and more. But right now, it could be in the conversation because I don't think I've ever seen a movie like this. We have a movie that I think for sure is the greatest sci-fi movie, sci-fi epic we've probably ever seen. I don't know how any other sci-fi movie could sniff what Denis Villeneuve does with this one. And we have a movie that gave us this lovely little treasure. What am I talking about? Why don't you pull up a chair, take a seat. We are getting ready to dive in, spoiler-free, into Dune Part 2. And you know the Seaman was huge on Dune. Dune is one of those movies where, like, when I reacted to the first trailer, all the Dune fans came out and they were like, dude, if you haven't read the book, you gotta read the book. And I explain this to people all the time. I don't really read things anymore that aren't accompanied by cartoon drawings. Comics is pretty much the only, like, physical media that I read these days. However, people were like, well, go to Audible, man. Do the audio book. And I was commuting a lot, so I did. It took me about a month to get through it on the commuting, but got through the whole thing. Blew my mind. Unbelievable book. Way different than the 1987 movie that came out because, you know, David Lynch did his own kind of thing with that one. But yeah, reading that book was just like a wild journey because it is dense. There's a lot there. And a lot of people have said it's the most unadaptable sci-fi book of all time because of how dense that theology and political stuff and different families and all these different things, you know, that play into this massive epic. I mean, it's literally a book that's broken into 3 books. You know, like it's got 3 individual parts inside the whole encompassing Dune book. And after reading it, I was thrilled to see what we were going to get from Denny based on the trailers, and then Dune came out, and this is the thing, man. Like, Dune, for me, is one of the greatest adaptation translations I've ever seen. Like, having had the book fresh in my mind going into that one, I was astounded by how Denny was able to just rip stuff off the page, throw it on the screen, and deliver it in a way that felt so faithful, so accurate. Like, the things he trimmed out or kind of blew through, or, you know, whatever he had to do to kind of keep things moving, were all things that were smart decisions, and it never lost what the key elements or essence of that first part of the story was. And I'm not gonna lie, man, like, this is a movie where it starts with sound, you know, and Denny just recently talked about how he's not a big dialogue guy. He thinks cinema is really about image and sound, and Dune is a perfect example of that, both 1 and 2. And, you know, 2 starts with a, you know, that throat music that Hans used in the first one. And the minute you hear it, you're just transported right back to Arrakis. You're in Dune, and the movie just takes you on a ride to the point where I was so immersed, I didn't think about the book not once. And it took me really not until the next day for me to go, you know, I walked out saying that was a perfect adaptation, and I stand by those words because I think what Denny does in this adaptation is brilliant when you're trying to create the epic and the movie and the story of Paul Muad'Dib that you are, or Paul Atreides, depending on where you're coming from, either Arrakis or out in the desert. But like, Paul's story, it is the focus, and the way that he does it delivers a really perfect run in Paul's story, and you never lose any of the key moments or any of the big pieces outside of like one major thing that he does. But I think it's one of these where it's not as much a direct translation because he changes some stuff, he removes things, like I don't want to spoil anything for anybody, but he removes a major character from this part of the story. And sitting and thinking about, while I love that character in the book, and I'm re-listening to Dune now, and I got up to the end of the first movie right where the second movie starts, that's where because I was expecting to be able to finish the book by Thursday. But the second half, where part 2 will pick up in the Audible, is like another 8+ hours. And then he condenses that down into 245. And I think the thing that he removes, he finds ways to kind of keep it relevant and give you like essences of it, but tease it up really well, I think, for part 3, where you can bring that character back and kind of dive into all the stuff that is necessary for that, because in the changes that he makes around that, it never loses sight of the end goal and where the story is going, to the point where I do think it's a very faithful adaptation. And there are lots of moments ripped right off the page and thrown on the screen again. But the spots where he changes things only enhance the story that they have. Mainly it enhances Paul's story, and it works in the context of a movie that has to be delivered to a mass audience, And when you think about what Denis said about not liking dialogue, and that's the other thing that, I've been thinking about, because it is different in the two movies, where there's a lot more dialogue in part 1. And you understand why it's there, because you're building this world. And like I said, it's a very dense book. The politics and the religion and the different families and how the just the universe in general works. You have to do a lot of exposition and some dialogue while also showing you all of the things, right? Like, Denis is always about show, don't tell for me. And even though you do more dialogue and things that are being told to you so that you explain things more so people understand what's going on and can grasp it, it's all done in a way where it feels very much like this one, right? It is a experience, the first Dune, man. Watching that one the first time, like I said, it was mind-blowing. But you listen to that quote where he's like, it's about image and sound, and that's what drives cinema, and, not wanting to make a movie one day where there is no dialogue. You get to 2, and that Denis is out, man. And what you physically are experiencing and seeing is to the point where, I was shooting a non-spoiler with my buddy Adler over at Kalex Encounters. Go give them a follow if you haven't. They're great guys. Adler and Quan are the men. I have a lot of fun the first time I met them, and then I've done 2 records now with Adler. We were talking Dune and stuff, and there's a moment in the movie that's really, really important into what's gonna come in the third, because of something that you changed, again, that makes sense for what we're doing. And I was like starting to explain. He was like, "Yeah, no, I know. Like, I totally picked that up." And there's no explanation. It's really just a visual thing, and that's where Denis thrives, man. Like, being able to visually tell a story, especially when you have someone like Greig Fraser shooting the living crap out of this movie, man. He is one of the best in the business. And watching what he does and how he captures, that's the thing. Like, between this and Dune 1 and the Batman, like, Fraser knows how to capture everything, like use every inch of that IMAX capture to his advantage, and you just get these beautiful images, and like you could just pause this movie anywhere, and whatever you pull off the screen is probably beautiful in some way or another. But that is like really is the image and the actions. This is a war movie. There's a lot of battle sequences, and there's some really tight hand-to-hand choreography, one-on-ones that go down in the movie where you're just like, yo, like, it's not all action, but when the action comes in, it is hitting and it feels epic. And obviously that Hans Zimmer score, man, like, it's one of these things where that, like I said, transports you back to Arrakis. You're in Dune the minute you start to hear that score, like that. I'm not a singer, but you know what I'm going. Like, you hear that throat music, like, boom, you're right there. And watching a movie that is driven by image and driven by sound, and the sound design, which is phenomenal. And then you hear what Denis says like that in the Variety quote, and you're just like, yeah, that's what this movie is. Like, it's crazy how much more he's able to push things that way and remove dialogue, because now everything was set up. And like I said, this movie isn't just all Denis, although what he does, man, from both the storytelling and just the epic nature, like, this one is huge. And I love how the camera moves. Like I said, Fraser he's in another world, man. Like, when he's behind camera, you're just getting something special almost always, it feels like, at this point. But like, yeah, how they move through the movie and the things that they build, like I said, the battle sequences and just these epic moments. Like, this is a sci-fi epic war movie to a T, and it is like none that you've ever seen before. But the other thing, I think, besides just what Denis doing and what Fraser's doing and what Hans is doing, is the visual effects in this movie are insane, man. Like, absolutely insane. Like, if you went and found an alien from a different planet in a different universe or a different galaxy, didn't know anything about us or filmmaking or what we do, and you just showed him this, and then you went, all right, so tell me what's not real in this movie. He'd be like, wait, what? Like, yeah, there's lots of things in this movie that aren't actually there when they're doing it, and now they are. And it'd be hard pressed to find it, man, because all this stuff just looks unbelievable. I mean, $190 million budget, which is no joking matter, but yet again, another movie that's under $200 million that does things that are far superior to some of these movies that are in the 250s, 400 million zones. Like, it's insane when you have the right team, what they can pull off with the resources that they're given. Like, this thing is... there were moments in the movie where, like, you're flying over a place and you're just like, none of that is real. But it sure looks like it's a real physical place. And the thing that I think makes these movies work is it's not just about the CGI visual effects. It's about the practical stuff and how Denis and Fraser blend those things on the screen. It gives you a quality like Jurassic Park, where it's like you have physical dinosaurs and CGI dinosaurs, and the mixing of the two is what starts to confuse the brain, where all of a sudden you almost can't separate what is and isn't. And that's something that I think the set design team and the practical effect engineers, like what they pull off in the movie, is what allows the CGI to pop in a way where, like, damn, dude, like, are we sure that like Denis didn't go to another galaxy somewhere and shoot this? Like, oh, dude, and it elicits just such a physical response. Like, the way the music and the imagery impact you emotionally, let alone as a film fan. Like, me and Adler were talking, like, we got kind of teary-eyed at moments in this movie because you're just seeing people operate at a level where they are legitimately masters of their craft. And that also applies to this entire freaking cast, which is unbelievable. And obviously it starts with Paul Atreides himself, Timothée Chalamet. I mean, he is Paul so much. And the thing that's fun for, I think, Chalamet with this movie is when you put the two movies together for what is one book, the arc that Paul has, where he starts and where he finishes, he's two completely different people. And as he, you see him struggle with some of the things that are starting to happen to him in the first movie, and to see how he adapts to those things and figures out what makes them useful and how that drives him and changes his focus sometimes and his purpose, and you start to see this different person that, like, when you get to the finale, which, like, spoilers, but I think based on what we've seen in the trailers, we all know we're building to a throwdown between Feyd-Rautha, played by Austin Butler, the nephew of Baron Harkonnen, and Timothée Chalamet's Paul Atreides. And when you get to that moment, like, this is a kid who had never killed anybody in the first movie, right? He had that one-on-one. And everything that he does in the movie is not that, right? Like, he's in battle. But the next time he's having a one-on-one is against Feyd-Rautha. And when you see what they do with Feyd-Rautha, and we'll talk about Austin Butler, Paul needs to be up for that challenge. And the kid at the beginning of the first movie, Feyd-Rautha would eat him alive. But what you get by the time you get to the end of this movie is someone that you think has a shot. And watching Chalamet mature in certain ways and how he finds a different level of power and confidence with what's going on with the Fremen is a wonderful, wonderful performance. And the flip side of that coin, like I said, is Austin Butler. Dude, this guy, right? Like, we talk about his voice with Elvis and how it impacted his actual voice for a while. He went and found a new voice. This voice will give you nightmares. And it's not just terrifying and creepy, but he finds ways to, like, accent or inflect on different words in a similar manner to Stellan Skarsgård, who plays Baron Harkonnen, who'd be his uncle, where it's like, this dude is 100% related to that guy. It was so cool. Like, it started to happen. I was just like, bro. And then when you just take the visual of what you're doing with Feyd-Rautha, the bald head, the no eyebrows, the black teeth, and then you see what he does physically. Like, it's his birthday at one point in this movie, and there's some stuff that goes down, and when you see it, you're like, oh, I'm very afraid of this man. And that's where, like I said, you need a Paul that can change and be something different by the end of the movie to have any shot to throw down against that guy. And it's just a wild performance. And I think anything that comes of that for Butler, you know, and you want to talk about range and talent, like, this performance is nothing like Elvis. And it is gonna be one of the more memorable. I've seen some people out in the world saying it's like one of the most memorable villain performances of all time, up there with like Joker and Javier Bardem of all people in No Country for Old Men. And I can understand that. I don't know if I'm quite there yet. I need to sit with it more, because I don't think he has as big of a piece as those guys. But it is one where it's like you will never forget some of the imagery and the things that you see with Feyd-Rautha himself, and just Butler knocked that out of the park. Zendaya fans, y'all should be psyched, because she's in this whole movie. You don't just get a tease of her. She is here. I mean, she is one of Paul's guides as he starts to, you know, get himself involved with the Fremen and look to become a Fremen himself. And watching how she can help him in certain manners in understanding the ways of Dune is just wonderful. But at the same time, building the love story that exists between Chani and Paul, it just felt so true to form. And she probably, like I said, has the second biggest piece in the movie outside of those two guys. And what she gives you, like, she's so good, man. Like, there are times where she just gives you one look. And that one look she gives you, you understand everything immediately. She impacts you emotionally in some way. It's just always a treat to see her on screen. And then the thing that I really love with all three of them, you know, Chalamet, Zendaya, and Butler, they're there to do everything, man. They show up and they did all the work, because there is some unreal choreography in this movie for some of the action sequences. And you know me, I'm a big John Wick guy. That's my bar at all times. And this movie, obviously, I don't think reaches those levels in the action, because it's a different kind of movie, right? This is an epic. There's more battle sequences. There's not always action going on, because you're building so many other things. And teeing up, might I add, like, tease up what we're going to get for 3 perfectly, and I can't wait to see what Denis does there. But that's going to be one of those moments where you walk out of the movie and go, that's a perfect trilogy. And I'm so excited. But like, there are moments, so you get them in splashes, but when you do get those one-on-one moments, or where you're following one person moving through a bunch of people and you're looking at the choreography, it's right up there, man. And I don't know if I've seen anything recently that hits as hard or moves as fast as some of the choreography in this movie, man. Like, you will not be disappointed when Feyd and Paul are standing opposite each other. Like, you get to that moment, and the way that Denis builds both of those characters and builds us to that moment, and the stakes that are on the line, like, your heart is going to be beating through your chest. And to know that the actors are doing it, I think always helps. And Denis, at multiple times, there's obviously moments where there's stunt doubles, but the multiple times in some of this tricky choreography, you're sitting there and the camera's just, there's freaking Timothée Chalamet, there's Austin Butler. And I wasn't totally shocked by that for either of them, because obviously we saw some of that from Chalamet, and Butler just feels like a guy who could commit going full into a character the way he does. But I didn't necessarily expect it from Zendaya, and there's a moment where you're following Chani, and she is kicking ass, and all of a sudden the camera never cuts, and she turns, and it's Zendaya, and you're like, there could be some trickery going in there, because, you know, movies are like that, but it felt like that was all Zendaya doing, like, throwing down, like, just seeing, I always appreciate, especially when you're gonna do action, when those actors show up, and all three of them do in that regard. And the rest of the cast, I mean, is great. Rebecca Ferguson as Lady Jessica. She, I think, as far as transformation from a character from the first movie to the end of the second movie, is another one like Paul. not weak, but she is fearful of fear and fearful of things going on a lot, right? She's constantly reciting the lines, fear is the mind killer. Like, you can't allow fear to get to you, but you feel that shakiness in her and what's on the line from her perspective in that first movie. What you get here with Lady Jessica among the Fremen is something totally different. I mean, her character goes through some things, and it's one of those spots where she doesn't have a ton, but she has a lot. You know what I mean? And every time she's on screen, the impact of those moments is so massive. And there's not a lot of dialogue around some of that. And to pull the things off that they do and utilize different elements, some of the changes that Denis makes to kind of capture the essence of some of the things that are not in the movie. I just thought Rebecca Ferguson was so good and made those moments transferable and relatable in a way where you could understand what was going on. And then Javier Bardem, Duke Leto is a pretty big character in the first one, and he's obviously, spoilers, not here for this one. And much like in the book, you need someone to fill that space, and Stilgar is that character. And while we do not get as much Stilgar as we get in the books, it's one of the things where it's like, this movie I enjoy so much, especially now listening to the second half of the book, because it gives you almost not a different experience, but in some ways it adds so much, man. It makes reading the book worthwhile. Where it was like the first one really translated a lot. This one changes some things up, but does it in a way where, like I said, you don't lose anything. And then if you go back and you listen, you just gain stuff. It makes the value of reading the book still worthwhile. And I know Frank Herbert's, son, tweeted out that like this is about as perfect as it could get, and I agree. But with what we do get with Stilgar, while you might trim out some of the things from his story, watching him be somewhat of one of the fanatics around these Fremen that believe Paul might be the Messiah, it's just wonderful to watch Bardem go off like that, man, because there's so much joy at certain moments and excitement for things that he's seeing, because like, oh my God, Paul's done this or he's done this, and that all is leading into this, mythology that's been built for these people. His joy is so infectious in the movie, and it just looks like Bardem's having a ball the whole time. But even when he's not having a ball, some of the moments he has with Paul or Lady Jessica, there are some like heavy hitter stuff. Some of the stuff that you get as you start to learn the Fremen ways, and him walking you through that. Like, there's one moment in this one room where you're talking about something that's very important in Dune and how they function differently, and then like he hits, as he always does. So I really enjoyed his performance. Josh Brolin back as Gurney Halleck. There's some fun stuff in there for Gurney Halleck fans this time around. I thought Brolin nailed it once again. And the moments that he gets with certain characters, it's one of those things that adds that emotion to the story, and you feel that, man. The chemistry between everybody in this cast is fantastic. And then whether it's Florence Pugh or Dave Bautista or Chris Nolan or Léa Seydoux, Charlotte Rampling, Stellan Skarsgård, everybody that shows up here knocks it out of the ballpark, whether it's a little or a lot. And again, seeing how Denis utilizes these characters and is able to morph certain things and recapture perfectly other things. I just love seeing anytime you have a cast that one shows up for each other, and you've seen in the press tours and some of the behind the scenes stuff, like this is a cast that definitely got along, and feeling that in the group, I think, brings out the best in everybody, and it turns in a movie that can allow you to have a popcorn bucket that looks like this, man. I love that my Dune Part 2 popcorn bucket is being added to the collection. I don't really know how you get popcorn like necessarily out, because like the teeth on the worm, they're I feel like they knock a lot of popcorn out, but I'm psyched to have that in my collection. But it's a movie that can give you things like that can be kind of silly, and Denis had a really funny reaction. He was kind of like, what the F? Look, I think he had a quote with the New York Times about what his response to the Dune bucket was, but it's only as everybody in the cast and the crew that are, being seen in the press tours or on the interviews or in different articles, it just seems like everybody enjoyed themselves so much, and it really did bring out the best because everybody was supporting everybody everywhere. And like I said, I think that all starts at the top with someone like Denis, and just what he gets from everyone that's on this film is what helps turn it into this epic masterpiece that this movie is. So let's get the Sea Maniacs up. Yeah, man. I mean, Denis is someone who doesn't just care about the people that he's working with, because you can tell, you can feel it in the movie, man. There's so much love behind everything that's coming from anyone, and like I said, it starts at the top with him. But he's a loyal book fan, you know what I mean? He loves this book. I mean, from what I understand, he carried the book in like his back pocket so he could pull it out at different times to reference things. Because like I said, there are direct translations where it's just like right off the page and you're like, I can't believe I'm getting these things. There's a specific moment with Paul that is a huge moment in both the movie and the book. And I remember listening to it the first time. It like transported me. It was like one of these stretches through the book where you could just see it exactly, and the feelings that it elicited because of what Paul was going through. I didn't necessarily think it was something you could capture on film, and then Denis did it in a way where I felt exactly the same way. It transported me right back to that moment, and from what I understand, he said that's what he was going for, because that was a moment that stood out to him. Like, the love Denis has for this material and the way he could translate certain things, and especially with this movie, morph certain things to be able to create a story that through the two movies is consistent and runs through wonderfully, but can remove certain elements to save things for the next movie, because that book is a lot smaller, so it gives you some more to play with. I'm fascinated to just see where he goes, but I think the way he does it, there's always love and intention behind it, where it's serving the movie, it's serving the characters, and it's not taking anything away, and it's giving us all the things that we want, like the action and the visuals, and just how he can storytell visually and through sound. It is something that turns this movie into an experience. It takes you someplace. It transports you somewhere. It elicits emotions you didn't know you would have elicit in a movie like this. And that's the thing I love about Denis and how he is as a filmmaker, specifically in sci-fi. I think he's delivered the best sci-fi movie of all time. Like I said, this is not a movie that you go, I've seen things like this, or movies do things like this. Like, this is an experience, and it's a special one, and it's not just Denis. Greig Fraser's cinematography is insane. His, understanding of scope and magnitude and how to utilize the entire IMAX screen, it's on display the whole time. And Hans Zimmer's score, it's perfection again. You know what I mean? It does exactly what you need it to do. It drives this movie. It brings goosebumps up and down your arms at certain moments, especially when it's combined with the imagery, and that's what makes it special, right? You go back to that not loving dialogue and living on image and sound from Denis in the Variety article. And it's like, you look at this movie, and that's what this thing is, man. And it's special in a way where there's nothing else like it. You could stop this movie at any single second and take an individual frame and show it to a person, and if they've seen Dune, they're going to go, that's Dune. It doesn't matter what shot it is. You take just 1 second of sound or music coming from the score from Hans Zimmer, and you are immediately transported to Arrakis, and that's Dune. You go, that's Dune, because nothing else like it exists. It doesn't sound like anything else. It's so specific, and because of all those things, you create a world and an environment that every time you go to the movies, you're transported and taken somewhere. And for me, man, like I said, I've heard other people say it, but it's a borderline religious experience as a film fan to see the masters of their craft right now, both someone as long as Hans and as recent as Fraser and Denis, just operating at their peak, and knowing that is driving the movie. It's no shock when you see all the actors show up and everybody is operating at peak. I mean, Chalamet, so good as Paul, and the journey he goes on is just tremendous. Zendaya, Austin Butler's Feyd-Rautha, one of the most memorable characters in the movie. He's terrifying. But whether it's Bardem or Brolin or Pugh or Batista, freaking Christopher Walken, Stellan Skarsgård, this thing is loaded. Charlotte Rampling, Lea Seydoux, everybody shows up, and it's not just the actors, and it's not just the main core of the creative, but the people working on the visual effects, which are insane, the people working on the choreography for the different action sequences, which are going to blow your mind. Like, If you're here for a sci-fi epic, you're getting everything you want. If you're just here for an epic in general and something that can, be driven by like a war movie, this is very much a war movie at certain times. Like, you're gonna have plenty here. If you're just a fan of film, I think this movie checks all the boxes you're looking for what gets you to go out of your house, go to the movie theater, see it on the biggest screen you can. If there's an IMAX, get there. If you don't, hit Dolby or hit one of those immersive like spots. Like, this is a movie that's gonna transport you places. It's a movie that's an obvious 5 out of 5 C-Maniacs for the C-Man. This movie is perfect for me. I stand by that, both from what we're given and both what we're adapting. It's amazing. I love being able to go and talk to people who haven't read the books. Like my friends that I went to the movie with, or Adler. Like, it's dope to go, man, you're getting the same experience. Like the core experience is the same. And then if you read the books, like I said, it adds so much more to it. I'm in love with Dune. I can't thank the Dune fans enough for getting me to listen to the book. It's become one of my favorite things, and this movie is fantastic. I said it in my short video. Like, this is Denis' Empire. I think in this trilogy, this is going to be the one everybody points back to and goes, that was the one. And I also think it's probably the greatest sci-fi movie I've ever seen. So I'm going to shut up, man. I've been talking for a half hour. I could talk for so many more. There's so many great things. Might do a spoiler after we see this again. I hate that I got to wait till Thursday, but I'm so excited for people to see this. Like I said, if you like the first one, make sure you get to a theater. See it on the biggest screen you can. It's worth every penny. But I'm going to shut up. I'm going to flip it over to you. How big of a Dune fan are you? Did you get out to one of the sneak peeks on Sunday? If you saw it, spoiler-free, but did it deliver for you? I had super high expectations, and it still shot through them. So was that your experience? Was there anything that wasn't hitting for you? Whether it was, a certain beat or a certain moment or something that was missing. I think for book fans, I'll be interested to hear what everyone's response is. Specifically if you read the books, like, how did it feel to not have a chunk of the second half of that book there, at least for a character or so? And did you think the decisions Denis made worked? If you haven't seen the movie, are you psyched? Are you a Dune fan? If you're not a Dune fan, maybe you didn't see the first one, but you're seeing just what people are saying. You're seeing some of the trailers, and you're like, man, maybe this is one I gotta go see. What are you guys thinking there? I really want to know. This is definitely a movie I want to engage with you guys. So, good, bad, indifferent. Anything you got, keep it spoiler-free on Dune Part 2. Put it down below in the comment section. I look forward to talking to you down there. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. And if you're new, you want to come hang out with the C-Man anytime we're talking movies, TV, trailer reactions, you want to be here for a potential spoiler if we do that. You want to see any of the other things that we got coming up. It feels like there's a lot of things going on in the movie world right now, and the Oscars obviously are on the horizon. So you want to be here for any of that coverage. You just dig the vibe of this wild and crazy guy. You just want to show a little love and support to the C-Man. You haven't yet. It's one easy way to do it. Come join C-Maniac Nation. Jump over there. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that little bell if you want those alerts. And until next time for the C-Man's Cinema Sit-Down, I've been the C-Man. I'm signing off. Peace. Hey, what's up, C-Maniac Nation? Winter Ken here, where we grow out our roots and our beard, letting you know that you can see some new C-Man videos right up here and right down here. And if you want all those videos and show that man a little love and support, come join C-Maniac Nation right over there, and the C-Man will catch you on the next one.